Hello and welcome to the Services School Stories podcast. You'll hear from veterans and partners who'll share their stories and insights about how you can use higher education to transition from the military and achieve your goals. Now let's get going. All right, welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Alec Emmert, and today we have Holden Lindblom. So Holden has got a fairly interesting story. He is a U.S. Army vet. He is immigrated to the United States from Sweden. He joined the U.S. Army, where he served as a forward observer deployed to Afghanistan. He was on active duty for 4 years, and then he got out, went to Stanford, and being a typical Stanford student, he went into the startup space. He is currently the co-founder of Vetri-Fi, a veteran-owned and operated financial service company, and I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. So without further ado, welcome, Holden, and we'd love to hear a little bit more about your background. What's your story and what brought you where you are today?
Yeah, thank you, Alex. Really appreciate it, and really happy to be on this podcast. I talk about service school all the time. Literally just yesterday, and that's not being hyperbolic. I was promoting you guys to somebody I was talking to. I was, as you mentioned, born in Sweden. I moved to the U.S. in elementary school, got put into ESL classes, and I don't know if that was the impetus for me not liking school as a kid, but I kind of carried on that tradition of just not really enjoying going to school throughout elementary school and even in middle school when I moved to Massachusetts. And so when I was in my junior year of high school, I just really didn't think college was going to be an option for me. Had zero direction in my life academically and professionally. And for whatever reason, I had this inkling in the back of my mind that the military could be a good option for me. I say this with great love. My mom used to threaten me with a military school when I would act up. And that maybe backfired on her when I eventually said, I'm going to go talk to a recruiter. And she said, no, I actually didn't mean it that way. I spoke to recruiters. I looked into my options. And surprisingly, I actually did pretty okay on my ASVAB. So I had a decent amount of options opened up to me, and joined the delayed entry program my junior year. And they told me, listen, you could go for your GED, but honestly, by the time we get that waived, you would have graduated. So just graduate on time. And that was enough of a carrot on a stick for me to finish in the bottom 10 of my class, not bottom 10%, but literally bottom 10 students. And then 15 days later, leaving for basic training in sunny, beautiful Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Then spending 2 years with the 173rd Airborne out in Italy, doing a deployment to Afghanistan with them, and 2 years with the 101st in Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And during that time, I had done a couple military schools, Bradley Fighting Vehicle, JFO, Joint Fire Observer School, and graduating at the top of my class there and realizing as simple as it sounds, like if you try, you can actually do quite a lot. Just showing up and putting a little bit of effort does mean a lot. And so towards the end of my contract, I realized, I think I can maybe do college. I didn't know what I really wanted to study. I didn't know where I could get into. I just knew that I wanted to pursue education. But beyond that, everything was this black hole. Back then, and, maybe to some extent still now, I think it was called Future Soldier was delayed entry program. There's another name for it, but, it was taught by somebody who went to University of Phoenix and just saying, hey, just go to the for-profit schools, or just go here, kind of just settle. And while there's maybe a problem for for-profit schools, there's nothing wrong with, state schools or whatnot. But I just didn't know the full opportunity that was kind of afforded to me. And by happenstance, I learned about service to school through, of all people, my sister, who was taking a law class with one of the co-founders. I don't know if you can bleep this if you're not allowed to disclose names, but Khalil Twal was taking a law class with my sister, and who also happened to have served in the 173rd. And he's like, oh, your brother's thinking of going into college. Like, talk to service school. And so my sister texted me like, hey, you should talk to this nonprofit. And to their credit, and really, like, by and large to their credit, I am where I am today because of them. And so when I got out, I had a 1.8 GPA. Again, nobody really would take me with that, but they said, listen, like, here's the roadmap that you can use to get into any college that you want. And obviously, as a then 22-year-old, kid with a 1.8 GPA, I was probably a little trepidatious, but you really put my full trust in them to follow that roadmap. And seeing others who had been successful and gone to these schools, I said, I think if they can do it, I can too. And did everything in my power in community college to get into one of those top universities. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, I got into Amherst College, Yale, Stanford, and a couple others. And I largely credit that to the mentors and support of Services School.
Oh, thanks. We appreciate that. But your natural abilities and work ethic, I'm sure, played a pretty big part in that. So just talk us through that, your military service. You said you're deployed. I mean, it was a very busy time in the military. You're overseas a lot. How did you, number one, balance your military service with getting set up for a transition and then identifying where to go to school, where to move? Can you just talk us through that whole process about how you transitioned from the military, and again, a very busy, busy military service, to getting into a community college that would set you up for success?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. So when I was with the 173rd, I think I used my tuition assistant to do 2 classes. And to be fair, that was, I think, dipping my toes into college classes and just seeing what it was about, but not necessarily fully kind of committing to it. Also, while at the 173rd, I was told about or discussed the Green to Gold program with West Point. And that was another opportunity where I actually got to like sit down with my company commander, who was a West Point grad, and kind of hear his experiences at the school and the pros and cons of the kind of service academies. And I had made a decision, after those conversations of going like, well, here's a route to higher education that I could go. But, after thinking through it a whole bunch, I said, I think because I'm in the military now, if I were to go to college full time, I kind of want a more traditional experience. And so ruled that out. And so when I got to the 101st, I would say the last year of service, when I kind of said, all right, I'm coming up on my re-enlistment, what should I really be doing? Is when I started thinking about my transition to college. And I will say, like, I probably did less preparation than most. And if I were to do it again, I'd probably prepare myself a little bit better. But I think it came down to mitigating downside potential and setting myself up for the most success. So when it came to what schools I was going to go to immediately afterwards, I knew that one of those top schools, once I talked to Services School, was going to be like my choice, right? Like the Yales, the Harvards, the Stanfords, etc. But if I couldn't get to them immediately, then how do I ensure that I'm not either shooting myself in the foot or at least giving myself the support network to like do well? And so that meant like, okay, I should probably go back to the East Coast. I have a friend group there. I have family there. I can kind of lean on them during this transition process. I also know that there's like a relatively good community college like network, especially in Massachusetts. The college education system there is really great. And so I'd applied actually to some state schools there that I got into. But Services School said, like, listen, like, if you know you're going to transition to a 4-year university anyways, probably better to start out at a community college. And to their credit, I think they're 100% right. Like, if you know you're going to transfer, in my opinion, community college is by far the best resource to go to. One, you tend to be more of a big fish in a small pond. I had unlimited basically office hours with all my professors and like one-on-one meetings, and became friends with some of them, and again, at least with my community college, there was just a lot of resources on campus for me to be able to stand out. I got to be president of student senate and presenters at different events and whatnot. And so for me, I think to kind of answer your question more directly, my last year of the military was more figuring out like what I didn't want, and then what I needed to be successful to get to that final endpoint of, Stanford.
Gotcha. And so, I mean, it's really interesting. So you talked about your high school experience where you're fairly unmotivated. School wasn't really your thing. Going to big name college wasn't really your thing. But at some point, a switch flipped, and you're like, it's Stanford or bust. And I guess when was that? And then talk us through like the drive you had to do that to get to that Stanford and what you did. Did you take the SATs? Did you ace all your classes? That kind of stuff. Like how did you translate that drive that you got to success?
I'm going to try my best to not say a whole bunch of platitudes or cliches that people roll their eyes to, which is always tricky because sometimes it's really basic stuff. Like the thing I often say is, I realize that if you put in hard work, like good things can happen. Like not all the time, like sometimes things just don't pan out. But I had teachers in high school that did believe in me. And I think like saw that there was like potential. They just either maybe didn't have the resources or know how to like kind of unlock that in me. Where when I joined the military, there's like there is no out. Like you show up to high school class and you don't do your homework. Nothing really happens, like maybe a roll of the eyes or some disappointment from the teacher, but like you're not going to get yelled at. Like you can't lose your job, you're not going to get thrown in the brig, you can't get demoted. But the stakes are like much higher in the military, and I think legitimately like what I needed at that time, and I don't think this works for everybody, is like some of that hard love. Like I literally needed a drill instructor, drill sergeant to like knife hand me and yell at me and like kind of break a lot of those bad habits. And there was definitely this shift from when I graduated basic training of like, as somebody who didn't really play sports growing up or apply themselves that much, like it felt like a huge accomplishment going, finishing off that 12 or 13-mile rock and like standing there in formation and, doing the ceremony, the graduation ceremony, and feeling like this sense of like, holy crap, like I actually like got through. I failed my first 2 PT tests. I was down to the final PT test. I could have washed out like very easily. And through like the support of like other people in my platoon of like, you're gonna pass. Like there's you will not fail tomorrow. And just like digging a little deeper and being like, oh wow, like I dug a little deeper. I found my motivation, and like now I'm staying up here with everybody else. Like felt like such an accomplishment. And I know that when I went into AIT or job training, I showed up, and the first day it was the PT test. I'm like, I'm never again gonna like take this for granted. Like I'm just gonna try to smoke this PT test as much as I can. And I think that just kind of carried on. Like for whatever reason, just having that little taste of success was like, I want to keep having this feeling. Like whatever this feeling is that I'm having right now, I want this to continue. And this, kind of indexing like where my motivation is and like hard work is, and like just trying to carry that forward. There's a second part to your question. I want to make sure I remember it correctly. Could you repeat the second part?
I mean, so it was kind of like at what point, and so you've answered that. So what I'm hearing here is basically like when you were in high school, you didn't. It was almost like a self-belief thing. Like you're like, I don't. You didn't think that going to Stanford was even in the realm of possibility, but getting these like little wins in the military that were building up gave you a sense of confidence. You kind of got hooked on winning. And then when you heard that Stanford or top college was in the realm of possibility for you, it was something that got you really motivated to do that. And then from there, what I'm interested to understand is really kind of the mechanics of the steps you took, and what was the recipe for success there? Because Stanford doesn't take just anybody, and even the veteran admit rate there is higher than it is for traditional students, but it's still very, very low in the single digits. So what you did is no small accomplishment, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners would like to know what it took for you to get into Stanford.
Yeah, so I took the ACT my last year before I got out. Full disclosure, did terribly. Realize you actually do have to study for that. So no amount of motivation and hua hua will get you a good ACT score. You legitimately have to study for it. So realized I needed more prep time. And I think that was like another reason why I thought like community college was going to be that like good route, was like, it took me 3 tries to place into college level algebra. Again, not due to any kind of like raw level of intelligence, but when you don't do math, well, one, when you barely pass math classes in high school, but then don't do it for 4 years, you're gonna forget a lot of it. But I think like most importantly, like I needed that opportunity to get like the core foundational, like how to be a student down at community college. I knew a large part of that was also going to be like prepping and studying for the ACT. To your point of now, like there's like a lot of veterans now applying to these amazing schools through the help of Service School. And that's amazing and that's fantastic, right? That also means that as an applicant, you're not just competing against like every other student. You're also now competing against all the other veterans. And so don't think that just because you're a veteran, somebody's going to accept you, right? Like you need to still prove yourself academically and professionally and all that other stuff. And so for me, I wanted to, and this kind of bleeds into startups as well, is you want to reduce the amount of reasons why somebody would say no, right. Like at the end of the day, you're trying to present yourself as a strong candidate. And I think to some extent, like whether that be a job or a school or investors for a startup, like they're kind of looking for reasons to say no to you. And your job is to be like, well, here are reasons why like you shouldn't be concerned about that. So academic rigor, like being able to have a good, strong GPA. And that is just like pure grit and determination. Again, there's like some level of raw intelligence, but mostly it's like just putting in the time and effort. Like I would go to the math tutors essentially every single day. I would go to almost every single office hours. Even if I got like a 97, if they allowed half credit for the questions you got wrong, like I would turn the 97 into a 98.5 or whatever, right? Because again, it wasn't this idea that like I wanted to be a perfectionist, but it's like, okay, but what if this question that I got wrong is on the final? So like, let me make sure I get it right now. And again, it's an opportunity to get it a little bit higher, right? So let's do that. I even use like ACT tutors, but then even beyond that, right? Again, a lot of these schools are looking for like holistic, well-rounded people, not just like people who can get straight A's across all their classes, but like, are you a contributor to your community? Do you have causes that you care about? Are you like doing things both within the classroom and outside of it? So that was also why I had, become, the vice president of the Veterans Club, the president of Student Senate. I was on the presidential select committee at community college, and doing all these kind of auxiliary things around the stuff that I was doing, even, co-founding a nonprofit, to be able to say like, hey, not only can I prove that I'm a good student, but I'm also like a contributor to my community, my school, those around me, that I'm like a well-rounded person. And the only caveat I would add there is if anyone's listening going like, well, I'm taking college classes while I'm in the service and like, there's no student senator, there isn't clubs I can join, or I just don't have the time because I have family and kids. I'm not saying those things as like, you have to do it all. It's just that you want to be able to present yourself. And sometimes it is like, hey, I'm going to community college and I have a wife and 3 kids and I'm supporting them on the weekend and doing all these other things. Like that is also stuff that contributes to your application.
Yeah, and what I'm hearing here is basically like when you got to community college, you just became a rock star. You're like, I'm going to become the model community college student. I'm going to do it all. I'm going to get straight A's, be on all like the student committee, and just be like the best possible student. And this was, if you don't mind me asking, which community college was this?
Quinsigamond Community College in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Very cool.
I actually, I have some of my best professors. I'm not kidding. I'm not just saying this. Like some of my best professors from Worcester, from Quinsigamond Community College. It was a great school.
Good stuff. Yeah, and a little plug for them. And I mean, it's always good for us because I mean, I've got the stat. I think it's about 80 odd percent of our applicants have done community college in some form. And not all community colleges are created equal. So when we hear about a good one, it's always good to give them some props. So to that, now I'm interested in hearing at what point in that community college process you started your college applications. How did you narrow your school selection down? And then, how did you engage the service of school and get those applications written?
Yeah, it's a great question. And can I give one more shout out to another? So it wasn't mine. It's my fiance's community college in Florida, Valencia College in I think it's in Orlando, is also actually, I think it's ranked as one of the best community colleges in the country. So sorry, shout out to that one, just because I know that is an amazing community college as well. To answer your question of like when I started thinking of school. So along the time of 2015, getting out of the military, there's another nonprofit called Warrior Scholar Project. Bleep that if we're not allowed to. There's a
We love WSPs. Yeah, compliment.
honestly, I do think Warrior Scholar Project and Services School mesh together really, really well, because you have one nonprofit that says here are the steps that you can take to get into some of the most amazing universities in the country, and this is the roadmap that you can take. And then Warrior Scholar Project kind of says, let me put you through a academic boot camp so that you're prepared to get there. And so I had done the 2-week academic boot camp at Yale. I think it's now 1 week. They changed things up a little bit since I went through. After that 2-week academic boot camp, I was like, I'm going to Yale, and this is the like place for me, right? Like, I will do everything in my power to get there. And so everything I did during my 2 years of community college was to get into Yale. When it came to the application process, obviously I needed to hedge my bets a little bit. I was confident and I felt like I had a really strong application, but you never, right? And so applying to one school is not advised to anybody. So I looked at a variety of different schools. I had applied to Amherst College, Duke, UPenn, Stanford, Yale, Harvard. I think those are maybe about 7, right?
Did you have any safety schools in there? That's kind of funny. You're like,
I think I did UMass. Yeah.
Don't one. Like every school you just listed accepts like 5% of their applicants.
Listen, it was that or re-enlist. I'm kidding. No, I had a no safety net. No, UMass Amherst I think was also one that I applied to. And I think I got accepted quite early into it, and so I was like, okay, because UMass Amherst I think has a feeder from community college, and so I think I had that one locked down. And to the credit of UMass Amherst, it's an amazing state school. Actually, the UMass system in general is incredible. So I had both UMass Amherst and Amherst, and don't get those two confused because they don't get happy when you confuse the two. But those were the schools that I kind of applied to, and just kind of was like, I mean, to some extent, it was just like, hey, I just know these are really great schools. But I think more specifically, it was like Yale because of Warrior Scholar Project, and it had such a big impact on me, and obviously an amazing school. Harvard, because growing up in Massachusetts, I had to do the most Massachusetts thing ever and be like, Boston, Harvard, like that's where you got to go, right? But also, again, friends and family living in Massachusetts. And then Stanford was honestly the wild card. I was like, it's funny enough, it was my services school, Simone, I'm going to mess up his last name, Legowski. I'm so sorry, Simone, for messing up your last name. But he was at Stanford, and he was like, you should apply. I'm like, I don't know, like, kind of want to be on the East Coast. I'm an East Coast guy. Like, he's like, just please apply. Like, just apply to it. You don't have to go. Just apply. I was like, okay, fine, like begrudgingly fine. And then the others, it's just like a hodgepodge of like, Duke felt kind of like, great school, maybe not top 10, but like kind of as a safety. Funny enough, they rejected me because they lost my application. No shots fired there, but did find that funny. And yeah, I think the others were just like a smattering of like good school, edge our bets if one of these others don't work. But it really was like Yale, Stanford, and Harvard were probably like the three like that was like, I really want to get into these schools.
Gotcha. So you got into all of them. So
So yeah, got rejected from Duke, unfortunately. Got rejected from UPenn, got rejected from Harvard. Princeton wasn't taking transfer students at the time, so I couldn't apply. And I think I maybe got rejected from one more, but yeah, those are the main ones that I remember.
So okay, but so my question is like, why Stanford? Like, what drove you to Stanford over other good alternatives?
So let's say that one of the schools, unfortunately, there was a mix-up on my financial aid. My tuition assistant was a little higher than I had expected at one of the schools. And so I was like, well, as they're fixing this, like, and to be fair, the school was actually really, really helpful. They were like, oh, sorry, like, we'll look into this. We'll see if we can get this corrected, etc. And they actually did correct my financial aid package. But I said, listen, I got like a week to like kill. I might as well, in case they come back and say like, hey, there's no way that we can adjust this financial aid. Like I should just check out the Stanford campus. And I found a $300 round trip ticket from Boston to San Francisco and or San Jose. And so I land, I'm at Stanford for like 2 days. I drop my bags off at the like Airbnb and I walk down Palm Drive. And I don't know if you've ever walked down Palm Drive in Stanford, but it was literally like the like most pristine, like kind of like a movie. Like the sun is shining, the palm trees are all there. They had some event going on. There was like music playing. Everyone's like on their bikes walking around, and I'm just like. It was just like 180 of like, oh, like this is it. Like I don't know what it was in particular. Probably the palm drives, the nice weather, all that. But just something clicked, and I was like, this has to be the school. Like something's speaking to me here that makes me want to come here. And then beyond that, right? I mean, if I were to like critically think about it or like add more reasons, I think there was also a level of me wanting to put myself in like an austere environment. I think like a lot of big things that happened in my life came from like a large move. Like I moved from Sweden to North Carolina, then North Carolina to Massachusetts, then I was in Fort Sill and Italy and Afghanistan, then Tennessee. Like all of these big moves in my life felt like kind of another chapter, like from being a Swede to an American to then like a Southerner to a Northerner to then a soldier to somebody deployed to, what have you. And it did feel like if I stay on the East Coast, I have my friends, I have my family, I have the support network, and it will be continuing on the path that I have, where going completely across the country, having no friends there, knowing nobody, felt like this like new chapter in my life of like, I can just be whoever I want and kind of reinvent myself as like now Stanford student Holden and do the things that I want to do and just see those opportunities out on the West Coast.
Oh, so yeah, you kind of very, very great segue, because the question I was going to ask you is really like, how did you do that? Because this was a huge transition, because Stanford is like Palo Alto is very different than Massachusetts or Worcester.
Yes, very much so.
Talk us through that move and how you made it work for yourself and how you really kind of found your home at Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very transparent, right? Like I was fortunate isn't the right word, but it was much easier for me, right? I mean, I wasn't married, didn't have any kids. Did I sell my car? I think I sold my car before I moved out there. And so it was really as simple as me just like packing up some bags and flying out there, right? And so I was very fortunate and grateful to have like a family that I could like stay with during community college. And so that when I, moved out there, I was pretty like unburdened by the things around me. I think I showed up 2 weeks early and like stayed at an Airbnb just to get adjusted to campus. But for me, the transfer students, especially the veteran transfer students, like we were allowed to stay off campus or be in grad housing. For me, I was 22 at the time, and I said, like, I want to, like, I'm in college. There's a time and a place for everything, and that's called college. And for me, I'm like, I want the full college experience. So I moved into the transfer dorms. So at that time, that was Kimberly dorms on campus. And I'm super grateful because I also got to now meet my now fiance, who is also a transfer student there. And so for me, it was, how do I fully immerse myself? And that meant like living in the dorms, being part of all the transfer orientation, and just considering myself just like any other student, joining the Stanford clubs and just like fully immersing myself.
Cool. And talk to me about, or talk to us rather, about the process of getting, I guess, acclimated academically. Stanford, notoriously rigorous curriculum. And so how did you, I guess, get your feet under you academically, and what kind of study strategies did you use? Did you work with the professors a lot? Did you get tutors, or how did you make it work for yourself academically?
Great question. It was probably the biggest punch to the face. There's, I mean, kind of two things. One, because I had like really no friend group going there, suddenly immersing myself and all that. Like I had joined clubs and all that. I did suddenly feel like this massive amount of like isolation, this like dread of potentially not being good enough. I did like start struggling in some classes. Like I suddenly went from like getting a 4.0 and like A's in all my classes to like B's and C's. Which, like I like, there's nothing to scoff about at a B. Like it's a good grade. But going from like, again, that big fish in a small pond to suddenly a small fish in a very, very large, I mean, it's like, what, 8,000 undergrads or something like that, 15,000 students in Stanford. Like you are one tiny, tiny piece in a very large puzzle. And so that was probably the biggest shock to my system of, there's a ton of great resources on campus, but also every other student's also using it. So if you go into office hours, which I would do, you'd also have like 30 other people there, which means like you're maybe getting like one, maybe two questions in while you're there. And as somebody who like is trying to like catch up later in life academically, it fell on me a lot more to like, listen, like you're not always going to like have the answers or even the time. Like I went from the semester system to the quarter system, which is the difference of 15 weeks versus 9 weeks, I think. So essentially losing like 6 weeks worth of time, but still basically the same amount of work. And so that was a really big shock to the system to me. And it also meant that I think I had to recalibrate what I found important, because again, like I wanted to be part of the clubs. I joined a fraternity. I was trying to be social and network and all that, where I think at community college, my whole identity was, how do I get into the top schools in university or top schools in the country? And then at Stanford, it was like, well, like, what do I want to do the rest of my life? And so it was a lot more like soul searching and these like nebulous, like hard to like define like goals of like, well, maybe I want to do investment banking. Maybe I want to do startups. Maybe I want to do that, which aren't like clearly defined metrics. So then it took some time to kind of be okay with that, be okay, maybe not getting A's, being okay that like, there are other things that I could pursue while at Stanford that are going to have longer term impacts my life than like getting the A in the class.
And okay, and that's very interesting. You brought up the career piece, and so talk us through that process. So you're at school, keeping your head above water, and at what point did you make the decision that you wanted to go in the startup world? Did you try an internship in a different field or anything like that? But what drew you to the startup community, and how did you transition from Stanford to a startup?
Yeah, so when I got out, I wanted to do investment banking because I felt like that was the thing that like everybody did. Because I mean, nothing speaks money more than investment banking. And when you're enlisted and making what, 23,000, a year, you're like, oh, investment banking makes a lot of money. Like that's what I should pursue, right? I did equity research my first summer in San Francisco. I was commuting literally from campus to the Transamerica building every single day in the morning, and I just didn't like it. Like it wasn't a field that spoke to me. I found it relatively boring, didn't scratch the kind of creative side of my brain. And it really kind of shocked me, kind of going back to the other question, like a lot of the things that I think you're trying to figure out when you go to like a 4-year university isn't, I mean, half of it is like, what do I want to do? But a lot of it is just mostly discovering like what you don't like realizing like what's the major that's actually going to make me feel the most fulfilled. I changed my major like 5 times. I really emphasize like trying to experiment with different classes and studying overseas and all these other things, just to be like what does Holden want to do, right? Like not like what are the things that like are going to make me successful, but like what are the things that like give me like both professional and like internal like motivation and success. Like what are the things that I'm not absolutely falling asleep in, and then also like challenge myself in a good way, like not just like, oh, I hate this and I'm going to challenge myself anyways, but like I enjoy it and it feels challenging at the same time. So after that, talking about some of that like existential dread, like for the past like 5 years, I was like, I'm going to do everything I can to get into Yale or Stanford and then like go into investment banking. And then I'm going to make a whole bunch of money and I'll be happy. And then I was like, oh, I don't like this. Like, what do I do now? And that was like a big, I think, moment for me of like, well, what was the past like 5 years of my life about if now suddenly I don't want to do this? Thankfully, there's like a lot of resources on campus. And so ZX Ventures, which was the incubator arm of Anheuser-Busch, was like doing a presentation. And I promise I didn't go there just because of the promise of free beer, but it sounded genuinely pretty interesting to me. And it was a 10-week accelerator program. They give you you're in a team of 3, so you and 2 others, $20,000 in 10 weeks, and they go like launch a company. Like that seems pretty cool. And like being a forward observer, I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me when I was like on a Colts team or like being on like, with a small platoon and just like, hey, like you've got a mission, like go figure it out. Right. Or like you're going to go up on an OP and, set up something. And so something about that attracted me immensely. And so that summer, then the next summer, I did the accelerator program, learn about the lean startup methodology, how to think through problem statements, talk to customers, build a solution around that, and like really bring it to market and pitch it to investors. And that was where I was like, I want to do this. Like, this is the thing that I want to do. Like, I don't care what I launch. I just know I want to do startups because it gave me that freedom of mobility. It gave me that creative pursuit, but it was also like kind of academically rigorous, or like you got to put in that like that critical lens of like thinking through these really, really hard problems. And so when I graduated, it was 2020. I actually graduated a quarter early to work with this German startup that was launching in the US. They sold into restaurants. And well, as we all know, COVID hit around that time, and all the restaurants closed down. And it's really hard to have a business that sells to a restaurant when there's no restaurants open. So before I even got to start, before I even had my first day, they're like, "Listen, sorry, we have to pull your offer." And I think my response to them was like, "Yeah, that's fair. Like that makes." If you kept my job, I would be more concerned because there's no company right now. And from there, I said like I could update my resume and like try applying during this time, but nobody's going to be hiring. So I might as well take this opportunity to pursue something myself.
Cool. All right. Well, that's a great segue. I know we're coming up on time, and I really want to make sure we get the chance to hear a little bit more about your company Vetri-Fi and what you're doing for the veteran community. So can you tell us a little bit about how you launched Vetri-Fi and what its services are?
Yeah. So I joined Context Ventures about maybe a year and a half ago as entrepreneur in residence. Tim Shaw, who's actually also the co-founder of Service to School. He's a GP of Context Ventures. About 80% of their investments go to veteran founders. I joined him. He was an investor in my first startup, and I was had this opportunity to just work on a whole bunch of different ideas. And he came up to me and goes, what are your thoughts on building a competitor to USAA? And I think my initial reaction was like, that seems impossible. But then afterwards I said, okay, let me put on my critical thinking hat on and see like, how would that actually look like? And like, what are the real pain points? And as I kind of researched and looked into this a little bit more, and having been an enlisted soldier myself and seeing some of the mistakes that either myself made or those I served with made, we saw that almost 40% of service members are uncomfortable in their financial situation. They're 4 times more likely to be victims of payday loan lenders than the general population. And less than 1% of them are actually going to go into financial distress, like foreclosure or bankruptcy, because guaranteed paycheck, housing, food, insurance, like the things that typically cause somebody to go into distress are covered by, the United States government. And so for us, it seemed like a good opportunity to solve this problem. And there's 3 major banks that serve this population. And yet, if they were doing a good job, in our opinion, then these other problems wouldn't exist. And so we really wanted to build something that set service members up for success from the very, very beginning, and then be able to support them throughout their military career and beyond, and ensure that when they get out, whether that be in 4 years or 20 years, that they feel like they're financially secure. So VetraFi serves everybody from early enlisted service members, senior NCOs and officers to veterans and their families. But primarily what we're launching with in Q2 of this year is that secured credit card. So for our users, they get to open up a checking account. They can spend it like any other card. They can go to the ATM, they can ACH, they can do whatever they want. But as they're spending with their card, we get to have an opportunity to report that to the credit bureaus. So whatever you have in your account, you can spend. You don't have to worry about a credit line or credit utilization. You even don't have to worry about paying it off every single month. By default, we have it set to auto pay. But by being able to report it to the credit bureaus, you get to build your credit in a safe, responsible way. And for most people entering into the service, you just don't have any credit. And it takes 6 months of reporting to get a credit score. So what we see is that service members, get in, they get to the first duty station, they want to buy the car, and the tale is old as time. They go out, buy the Mustang at 35% APR. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to solve for, is how do we make sure that they have the resources, tools, and education that they need to make smart, sound decisions throughout their career.
Got it. And so I think that what I'm hearing is that the key differentiator that you provide, in addition to the products, is an education element about how to responsibly use them. Whereas with many other banks, you can take out a credit card with a set interest rate and not really understand what that even really means, and you can get yourself into a lot of trouble. Whereas you're more of a responsible company that views it as your mission to also educate as a person buys a product or utilize a financial instrument.
Exactly. And I mean, I think similar to service at school, in the sense of like, you just don't know what you don't know, right? Like, what are the resources and tools out there? And for us, that's a big mission of ours. It's just service members don't know what they don't know, especially when it comes to finances. If you're coming out of high school, you're not going to be a whiz. Besides that, maybe one TSP class you get in basic training when you're sleep deprived and just got yelled at. It's a big, scary world out there. And for us, it's trying to simplify that, make it easy to understand. And again, it's just giving them the tools that they need to make the smart decision, not necessarily just saying like, these are the things you need to do.
Awesome. That's such a needed service, and it's awesome that you're out there doing it, and glad that you made the decision to go this route instead of just sitting around doing equity research. So I'm
happy for it too.
Yeah. So very cool. I know we're coming up on time, but I want to give you the opportunity to share any last words. So is there any parting shots, any parting wisdom you have for our listeners?
Join our early access at VetraFi.com. That's a big one. And then go donate to Service to School. Donate to Service to School. Use Service to School. Tell all your friends and family about Service to School. I promise they're not paying me to say this. I would not be where I am today without them. And I owe a major debt of gratitude and my own cash donations for all the things that they've done for me in my career and my education.
Awesome. Holden, thank you so much for your time. It's been great talking to you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you.
Take care.
That's all we have for this episode. Join us next week, same time, same place, where we share more Service to School stories. Service to School Stories is hosted by Sydney Mathis, Chief Program Officer, and Alec Emmert, Service to School CEO. Our podcast is produced and edited by our Director of Communication, Amanda Tobias. Service to School is a 501c3 nonprofit providing free college admission support to transitioning service members and veterans. Join us next week and follow us for more on your favorite social media platforms.